Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to crack open some pretty dense source material and basically give you the essential intelligence, saving you potentially weeks of reading.
That's the plan.
And today we've got a really comprehensive stack. It covers, well, the entire spectrum of modern internal security challenges. We're talking everything from, dark web exploitation by organized crime.
All the way up to huge defense reforms in India, like Agnipath, integrated theater commands. It's a massive picture.
Exactly. This isn't just about, standard policing. It's looking at a kind of total approach against threats that have really converged.
Right. And if you look through this material, it becomes clear pretty quickly that our old ways of thinking about security, they're kind of obsolete now.
So our mission today, really, is to piece together India's strategy here. How terrorism, crime networks, cyber attacks, how they've all sort of blended together into one big challenge.
And how the response is evolving across the board diplomacy, the military structure itself, even the legal frameworks. It's all adjusting to fight, well, what feels like a completely new type of conflict.
If there's one big aha moment for you, the listener, from all this material, what would it be? What's the core insight?
I think it's the blurring of lines. Definitely. The sources really hammer this home. Internal threats, now deeply linked to external actors. Kinetic war. Actual fighting is tangled up with non-kinetic stuff like data breaches, disinformation, economic pressure.
No clear boundaries anymore.
None. And that forces this huge shift towards a whole of government response. And maybe even, as the sources suggest, a whole of society approach. Protection isn't just the government's job anymore.
Okay, that's a heavy starting point. Let's unpack that convergence, beginning where, well, almost everything seems to begin these days. The digital world. When we talk about critical infrastructure now, communication networks are front and center. The sources emphasize this dual-use nature.
Absolutely. It's the engine for so much good stuff, right?
Yeah, digital public infrastructure, UPI for payments, MOOCs for learning, telemedicine, the UMang app platform, even Cohen during the pandemic. It powers the economy, governance, health. Huge benefits.
And it's a big but. Every single connection, every device, every piece of software in that network, it's also a vulnerability, a massive one.
The classic double-edged sword.
Exactly. Because it's so vital, the challenges of, keeping data secure, making sure systems are up, ensuring confidentiality, they're enormous. We're fighting off everything from basic eavesdropping to really sophisticated attacks trying to undermine digital sovereignty itself.
Okay, just to make sure we're all on the same page, can you quickly run through those basic pillars of cybersecurity? It's not just about passwords, is it?
No, not at all. It's a layered defense. So confidentiality, that's about keeping secret, usually using encryption.
Oh.
Then integrity, making sure data hasn't been messed with, often checked with things called hashes. Availability is crucial, meaning the systems and data have to be there when you need them. Downtime can be catastrophic. And the fourth one, maybe less obvious, is non-repudiation.
Which means?
Basically proving who sent what. Digital signatures are key here. You can't send a message and then later deny you sent it. It provides accountability.
Got it. And this fundamental vulnerability, it's not just criminals exploiting anymore. State actors are major players now.
That's a huge theme in the sources. This growing concern about state-sponsored cyber attacks. Some are even calling it a technological Cold War.
That's a chilling phrase.
It is, because protecting digital sovereignty isn't just about stopping petty hackers. It's about defending national infrastructure from very well-resourced, persistent state adversaries.
And the data suggests India is right in the crosshairs.
Constantly. The stats are pretty stark. India ranks as the third most targeted country for web threats globally. But what's maybe even more worrying is the human element.
What do you mean?
Well, there's data from PwC cited here suggesting something like 80% of Indians share sensitive information publicly online. Think about that.
80%. That's incredible.
It is. It basically means attackers have a massive head start through social engineering before they even need to think about sophisticated hacking. The door's already partly open.
That really reframes the problem. It's not just tech. It's behavior. And we've seen the consequences in major attacks, right? Targeting really critical systems.
Oh, absolutely. It's moved way beyond just individual phishing scams. Remember the cyber attack against AIMS, the big hospital network, back in 2022?
Yeah, that caused chaos.
Crippled parts of the national health infrastructure for days. And it's not isolated. Cloud SEK, another source mentioned, recently ranked India as the second most targeted country overall for cyber attacks. It's relentless, and it's focused on causing maximum disruption.
Okay, so we have this vulnerable digital space under constant attack. Now let's connect that directly to, well, the core internal security challenge. Terrorism and radicalization. Social media seems to be ground zero for this.
It really is. It's not just a tool for terrorists, it's the environment. It thrives on things social media provides: community, openness, and maybe most importantly, echo chambers.
The sources actually lay out a kind of process, don't they? 4 stages extremists use on these platforms.
Yeah, it's quite methodical. Stage 1 is content creation. They need to look legitimate, professional even, so they create things like slick digital magazines. ISIS had Dabiq, Al-Qaeda has Inspire.
So they build a brand, almost.
Sort of, yeah. It gives their extreme ideas a veneer of authority. Then comes stage 2, dissemination, getting the message out.
How do they manage that at scale?
Often cleverly using the platform's own features. The example given is the Boogaloo movement using private Facebook groups. They leverage privacy settings to fly under the radar while efficiently pushing content to people already somewhat sympathetic.
Wait a minute. If they're using private groups, encrypted chats, how can authorities even monitor this effectively? The sheer volume must be impossible.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It touches on surveillance, encryption debates. We'll get into the legal side later. But these private encrypted spaces are absolutely vital for stage 3. Grooming and indoctrination.
Right. This is where it gets personal.
Exactly. Groups like the Taliban reportedly shift from broad public messages to very targeted one-on-one communication using WhatsApp or Telegram. This builds personal bonds, isolates the potential recruit from counter-arguments, and really cements their commitment.
And the final step.
Stage 4. Activation. This is the payoff for them. Using the platforms to issue a call to action, coordinate logistics, or simply inspire someone to carry out an attack. Al-Qaeda, for example, has used its online presence to encourage lone wolf attacks.
It's a chillingly effective pipeline. The sources point to something even more insidious, how the tech itself helps them, the whole rabbit hole effect.
Yeah, this is crucial. It's about the algorithms. Recommender algorithms, the things that suggest what you watch or read next. They're designed for one thing: keeping you engaged. Maximizing your time on the platform.
So they feed you stuff you'll react strongly to.
Precisely. And often, the strongest reactions come from more extreme, more sensational content. So over time, the algorithm can subtly, or not so subtly, push users towards increasingly radical material.
So the system that's meant to show me more cat videos could actually lead someone down a path to extremism.
In essence, yes. It creates these filter bubbles where you only see things that confirm what you already believe or lean towards believing. This fuels group polarization confirmation bias on steroids. Your views get more and more extreme because you're never challenged. You just keep going deeper down the rabbit hole. It's a massive problem with huge security implications.
That idea of algorithms actively radicalizing people, it's deeply disturbing. Shows how fundamental the tech problem is. But, radical ideas need money to become real threats, which brings us right to this convergence of organized crime and terrorism.
The link is undeniable based on these sources. It's often a symbiotic relationship. Terrorist groups, especially those operating internationally, lean heavily on organized crime, or OC networks for funding.
Cash flow, basically.
Exactly. OC provides the money needed for everything: weapons, propaganda, paying fighters, logistics. It's the financial engine.
What kind of criminal activities are we talking about here? What are the main revenue streams?
It's a whole menu of illicit activities. Counterfeit goods are big, extortion rackets, gun running, obviously. Sophisticated money laundering operations are essential. Human trafficking generates huge profits. And the sources really emphasize the opium trade, particularly in certain regions. It provides massive amounts of cash that's relatively easy to move.
And it works the other way too, right? Crime doesn't just fund terror. Sometimes it kind of morphs into it.
That's the other side of the coin. You can have purely profit-driven, organized crime groups that, over time, maybe gain so much power or influence that they start sponsoring or even becoming ideologically motivated groups, or ethno-nationalist ones. They might start with things like bank robberies or extortion just to get funds, but their goals can shift. The line gets very blurry.
The sources give some specific examples of the scale, particularly with narcotics funding this.
Yes, drugs are a major focus. There's a mention of a reported surge in drug abuse in Kerala, which acts as a sort of local indicator for larger trafficking routes being used. On a bigger scale, the Smuggling in India report is cited, detailing seizures of over 8,200 kilograms of contraband. That's a huge amount, and it represents the kind of money flowing into the coffers of both OC and terrorist groups.
Okay, so if crime and terror are intertwined like this, the response has to be just as interconnected. Legal tools, institutions working together, technology. Let's start with the laws aimed at organized crime specifically.
Right. The sources point out that standard criminal laws often aren't enough for dealing with entrenched criminal syndicates, so you have specialized laws like MCOCA in Maharashtra and KCOCA in Karnataka.
What makes them different? Why are they needed?
They offer specific powers designed to dismantle these complex networks. For example, under certain conditions, confessions made to senior police officers can be admissible in court, which is unusual. Bail conditions are much stricter, making it harder for bosses to run things from behind bars. And KCOCA, interestingly, has specific requirements, like needing 2 or more people involved in serious crimes and evidence of multiple prior offenses. It targets the ongoing, systematic nature of organized crime, not just isolated incidents.
And then there are the central laws focused on the money aspect.
Absolutely critical. The Prevention of Money Laundering Act, PMLA, from 2002 is key. It allows authorities to track and seize assets linked to laundered money hitting them where it hurts. And notably, the new Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita, the overhauled legal code, includes a specific section 111 that directly criminalizes organized crime. That shows a clear systemic focus.
But laws are only effective if they're enforced, and crime doesn't stop at state borders or agency jurisdictions.
Correct. So institutionally, coordination is the name of the game. The sources mention the key players: the CBI, the Central Bureau of Investigation, the Enforcement Directorate, or ED, which focuses on financial crimes under PMLA, and critically, the Multi-Agency Center, MAC.
What does MAC do?
Think of it as an intelligence fusion center. It operates 247, bringing together inputs from various agencies to share intelligence in real time. The goal is to break down those bureaucratic silos that criminals use to exploit. No more left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing.
And technology underpins all of this.
Hugely. There's the CCTNS, Crime and Criminal Tracking Network and Systems, which aims to link every police station digitally across the country. Then there's NatGRID, the National Intelligence Grid. That's even more ambitious, designed to connect diverse databases, travel records, financial transactions, communications data to spot hidden patterns of criminal or terrorist activity.
Sounds powerful.
And add to that things like advanced facial recognition systems being deployed for surveillance and identification. The state is definitely leveraging tech.
Now, when these criminal networks inevitably go international, which they almost always do, that's where global cooperation comes in. Why is Interpol so important here?
Because crime is globalized. These networks operate across borders seamlessly, taking advantage of different laws, bureaucratic delays in communication between countries. Interpol provides that essential bridge for police forces worldwide to communicate quickly and request operational help.
Can we quickly run through those famous Interpol color-coded notices they pop up in the news sometimes?
Sure. They're basically international alerts with specific purposes. The most famous is the Red Notice. It's a request to find and provisionally arrest someone wanted for extradition. An Orange Notice is a serious warning about an imminent threat, maybe a bomb, a weapon, something dangerous. A Blue Notice is used to collect more information about a person's identity or whereabouts in relation to a crime. Green Notices warn about known criminals who might repeat offenses in other countries, sort of a heads up. Black Notices are used when authorities need help identifying a deceased person. And Purple Notices are interesting. They share information about criminal methods, tools, or concealment tactics, like sharing intel on a new smuggling technique.
That seems like a pretty comprehensive system. But you often hear that international legal stuff is painfully slow. How does India try to speed things up?
You've hit the nail on the head. The traditional way is through mutual legal assistance treaties, or MLATs. India has signed over 40 of these, but they rely on formal diplomatic and judicial channels. Think letters rogatory, official translations, multiple government departments. It can take months, even years.
Not exactly ideal if you need information quickly.
Not at all. So the sources highlight India's solution, developed at the CBI, Bharatpol. It's designed specifically to overcome this slowness.
How does it work?
It's essentially a secure digital platform. It allows for much faster, direct requests for assistance from police forces in 195 countries, using 5 specific modules for different types of requests. It bypasses a lot of the formal, paper-based MLAT process for more immediate operational needs, speed, and integration through tech.
All right, we've covered the digital battlefield, the crime, terror nexus, the policing response. Now let's zoom out to the bigger strategic picture, how nations actually engage in conflict today, often without declaring outright war. That brings us to gray zone warfare.
Yeah, the gray zone. It's become a defining feature of modern geopolitics. The sources describe it perfectly. It exists in between the spectrum of conflict. It's that really frustrating, ambiguous situation, no war, no peace.
And the goal for the aggressor
Is usually to achieve significant strategic gains, maybe territorial changes, economic dominance, but crucially, without crossing the threshold that would trigger a conventional military response from the country being targeted. It's about achieving objectives subtly, incrementally.
What makes it so effective and so tricky to counter?
Several characteristics make it dangerous. One, the actions are always deliberately kept below the level of a clear act of war. Two, they're often deniable or non-attributable, think cyber attacks with unclear origins, or using proxy forces. Makes diplomatic pushback hard. Three, it's often perpetual, a constant grinding pressure rather than a single big event.
What kinds of methods are we talking about? It's not just military posturing, is it?
No, it's much broader. Economic warfare is key. Trade pressure, sanctions, predatory investments, persistent cyber attacks to degrade infrastructure or steal data, disinformation campaigns designed to sow confusion or distrust within the target country. And very importantly, asserting territorial claims backed by, let's say, creative, legal, or historical arguments. The classic example mentioned is China's gradual consolidation of control in the South China Sea.
So if it's low cost and deniable for the aggressor, how do you fight back? Conventional military power seems insufficient on its own.
Absolutely. Countering gray zone tactics requires that whole-of-government approach we mentioned earlier. You need coordinated diplomatic pressure, building economic resilience, effective counter-information strategies, all alongside having a strong conventional military deterrent. You have to show you can respond kinetically if needed, but often the best defense is non-kinetic resilience and calling out the behavior.
Okay, so that's the gray zone. How does hybrid warfare fit in? Is it the same thing or different?
It's related but distinct. Think of it like this. Gray zone describes the environment, that ambiguous space. Hybrid warfare describes the methods used within that space. Specifically, it's the deliberate blending of conventional military tools, kinetic actions troops, with non-conventional tools, non-kinetic things like cyber, info ops, economic pressure, all at the same time, orchestrated towards a single goal.
So it's mixing old school war with new school tactics.
Exactly. It's the coordinated use of both.
Can you give a clear example from the sources that shows this mix in action?
The India-China situation is cited as a prime example. You see conventional military pressure and territorial probing along the border that's kinetic. But happening simultaneously, you have aggressive economic tactics, like attempts at economic colonization in neighboring countries, plus widespread, ongoing state-backed cyber attacks targeting Indian systems. That's the hybrid mix.
And the other classic example often mentioned.
Russia in Crimea is another one highlighted. They used conventional special forces, the so-called Little Green Men, but denied they were Russian troops. This was combined with sponsored political unrest, disinformation campaigns, and cyber attacks that crippled Ukrainian communications and infrastructure, kinetic and non-kinetic, seamlessly integrated.
So for defense planners today, it means you can't just think about tanks and fighter jets anymore. You have to integrate cyber defenses, economic strategy, even soft power into your core military thinking.
Precisely. The way forward, according to these sources, involves several things. More proactive diplomatic engagement using international forums, building economic alternatives and resilience, maybe through initiatives like the Blue Dot Network for infrastructure, militarily developing real joint cyber warfare capabilities, maybe leveraging partnerships like the ICEAD initiative with the US, and importantly, using soft power effectively to counter hostile narratives. It's a much more complex battlefield.
We've mapped out these complex modern threats. Now let's look closely at India's internal strategy to counter terrorism. It really seems to embody that whole of government idea we keep mentioning.
It's definitely comprehensive, tackling the problem from multiple angles.
Yeah.
Socially, there's a big emphasis on things like de-radicalization programs and public awareness campaigns. You also see initiatives like Operation Sadparna, where the army engages in outreach in conflict zones, building schools, providing medical aid, trying to win hearts and minds, and reduce the potential pool of recruits for extremist groups.
That makes sense. And legally, the state's equipping its agencies with more powerful tools, especially for cross-border threats.
Yes, significant amendments have been made to key laws like the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, or UAPA, and the NIA Act, which governs the National Investigation Agency.
What do those changes do?
They expand the NIA's mandate to cover things like human trafficking and cyber terrorism. But crucially, the amendments give the NIA jurisdiction to investigate terror cases outside India if they involve Indian interests or citizens abroad. That's a major expansion of power.
Economically, how are they tackling the money flow beyond just the general anti-money laundering laws like PMLA?
They're targeting specific vulnerabilities. There's the FICN Coordination Group, for instance, focused specifically on fake Indian currency notes, which has historically been a major source of terror funding. And with the rise of digital finance, there's now a significant focus on cryptocurrency surveillance and regulation to prevent its misuse.
And technically, it sounds like surveillance is becoming more proactive.
That seems to be the direction. The new telecom rules are mentioned, which give authorities more power for social media surveillance, requiring platforms to cooperate with interception requests. This is combined with tighter monitoring of financial transactions under changes to PMLA rules. The aim is to create a finer net to catch suspicious activity.
And politically,
the strategy stresses things like building inter-party consensus on critical security issues, like left-wing extremism, and promoting interfaith dialogue is seen as important to counter the divisive narratives that extremists often exploit.
Okay, let's shift from the internal strategy to the global stage. India's diplomatic approach to terrorism has apparently evolved through distinct phases over the years.
That's right. The sources outline roughly 3 stages. The first was really focused on delegitimization, getting the world to agree that terrorism is unacceptable, regardless of the supposed cause, just condemning it universally. The second phase was pushing a root cause approach. India argued that you can't just condemn terrorism. The international community also needs to address the underlying factors. Political grievances, socioeconomic conditions that might drive people towards extremism.
The current phase.
Now, the push is for a truly comprehensive approach. This means integrating all instruments of national and international power, diplomatic, economic, legal, intelligence sharing to deny terrorists any support, funding, or safe havens anywhere in the world. A coordinated global squeeze.
A big part of that comprehensive approach has been the long-standing push for a comprehensive convention on international terrorism, the CCIT.
Yeah.
Why hasn't that been finalized after all these years?
It boils down to one major sticking point: defining terrorism. The CCIT aims to create a single, universally accepted legal definition to make international cooperation seamless. But achieving consensus on that definition has been incredibly difficult.
Why? What's the disagreement?
Certain countries have reservations, often related to historical conflicts or ongoing disputes about whether movements fighting for self-determination should be classified as terrorism. This fundamental disagreement over the definition has basically stalled the convention for decades.
Despite that major hurdle, the sources suggest India has achieved some significant diplomatic wins on the counterterrorism front. What are some key successes?
A major one highlighted is the success in reframing the narrative around Kashmir, positioning it firmly as an internal matter while simultaneously and persistently working to expose state sponsorship of terrorism affecting India. This has helped build stronger, more unified counterterrorism partnerships with key allies.
Which allies specifically?
The sources mention traditional partners like the U.S., France, Israel, but also key partners in the Middle East like Egypt and Bahrain. There's a shared concern, especially about high-tech terrorism and the need for cooperation on things like counter-radicalization. High-level diplomatic visits and dialogues have been crucial in cementing these alliances.
But it's not all smooth sailing. International diplomacy is complex. What are some of the ongoing challenges India faces?
There are definitely frustrations. One is the struggle to get consistent international attention and accountability for attacks targeting India. Often, attacks don't generate the same level of global headlines or sustained pressure as incidents in Western countries might.
That must be difficult.
It dilutes the diplomatic leverage. Also, while core alliances are strong, influencing countries that have historically held different positions, like Turkey or Malaysia mentioned in the sources, remains a challenge. And then there are awkward diplomatic situations, like the example given of Pakistan chairing the UN Security Council's Taliban Sanctions Committee, at one point a clear point of friction given the context.
We actually have a very recent concrete example of India taking a firm diplomatic stance within a multilateral setting, right, at the SEO meeting.
Yes, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Defense Ministers meeting in Astana. This is a fascinating case study in drawing a line. According to the sources, China and Pakistan tried to weaken the language in the final joint statement, specifically trying to avoid strong condemnation of state-sponsored terrorism.
And India's response?
India refused to sign, flat out. They insisted on explicit language condemning state sponsorship, even referencing specific recent incidents like one in Pahalgam. When the final text didn't meet that standard, India simply opted out of endorsing the joint communiqué altogether, a very clear signal.
Let's wrap up this section with a very tangible example of how security directly impacts people's lives and livelihoods. The case study of tourism in the Kiran, Machko, and Gurez valleys in Kashmir.
This really brings it down to the ground level. It shows the direct link between security stability and economic opportunity. After the India-Pakistan ceasefire agreement in February 2021, there was a noticeable improvement in the security climate along the line of control.
And the result?
Tourism boomed. Locals started opening homestays, creating new livelihoods. Then, the G20 Tourism Working Group meeting held in Srinagar acted as a further catalyst. Foreign tourist arrivals in the region apparently increased 21-fold. It was a clear peace dividend, with tourism offering a positive economic alternative.
But that progress is fragile, isn't it?
Yeah.
Dependent on the security situation remaining stable.
Extremely fragile. The sources mention an infiltration attempt in the Kiran sector in July 2024, where 3 infiltrators were killed. That single incident immediately led to a security clampdown.
What kind of clampdown?
Restrictions were reimposed, things like mandatory online permits for movement, certain areas near the LOC declared off-limits, no more spontaneous visits or adventure tourism like off-roading allowed in those specific zones. That one security event effectively paused or even reversed the growing tourism economy there, proving just how dependent local prosperity is on the prevailing security dynamics.
Okay, so to manage this complex hybrid threat environment, India is undertaking some massive reforms in its defense structure and procurement. Let's start with the money side. The Defense Acquisition Procedure, or DAP, and this big push for Atmanirbhar Bharat self-reliance in defense.
Right. The idea of indigenization isn't brand new, but the approach has become much more formalized and, frankly, more assertive. Way back after 1956, the focus was mostly on licensed production building foreign designs in India.
Which doesn't really give you deep technological know-how.
Exactly. You learn to assemble, maybe manufacture some parts, but you don't own the core technology. The Kargil conflict in 1999 really drove home the need for genuine domestic capability. The Kargil Review Committee's recommendations led directly to the first DAP in 2002, and it's evolved since then into a system that really emphasizes what the sources call forcible indigenization.
Forcible sounds strong. How does the DAP actually force or push for domestic production?
Primarily through preferential treatment in procurement. The absolute highest priority category is IDDM, indigenously designed, developed, and manufactured. If an Indian company can offer a product that meets this criteria, it gets preference over imports or licensed production.
So it creates a strong incentive for local R&D.
Absolutely. And the DAP now clearly defines different pathways. Make-I projects get government funding for development. Make-I relies on industry funding for prototypes. Make-The is focused specifically on finding domestic alternatives for components that are currently imported. It's a structured ladder to encourage local innovation.
And there's also the Strategic Partner Model, or SPM. What's the idea behind that?
SPM is designed for really big, complex platforms, think submarines or fighter jets. It involves selecting a specific Indian private company to partner long-term with a major foreign original equipment manufacturer, an OEM.
So it's about technology transfer.
Deep technology transfer. It's meant to go beyond just assembly. The model envisages the foreign OEM providing extensive hand-holding, training, and potentially even setting up joint ventures to build up that Indian partner's capability over the long haul, embedding the tech domestically.
This level of ambition must require attracting foreign investment, too.
Definitely. To make these partnerships attractive and bring in capital and tech, the foreign direct investment, FDI, limits in defense were significantly increased. Now it's 49% allowed automatically, and up to 74% can be approved for projects involving critical technologies or deemed strategically important.
And the goal is pretty ambitious, export-wise.
Hugely ambitious. India's target is to boost defense exports to 50,000 crore. That's around $6 billion by 2029. The sources note a remarkable 34-fold increase in exports since 2014 already. Systems like the Pinaka multi-barrel rocket launchers and BrahMos supersonic missiles are being exported to countries like the USA, France, and Armenia.
Okay, let's shift gears to probably the most talked about and maybe most controversial recent defense reform, the Agnipath scheme.
Ah yes, Agnipath. It's aimed at fundamentally changing recruitment for the armed forces, Army, Navy, Air Force.
What's the official thinking behind it? Why make such a big change?
The main arguments put forward are about efficiency and modernization. Firstly, financial efficiency. A large chunk of the defense budget traditionally went to salaries and pensions. By recruiting soldiers, agnivirs, for a shorter 4-year term, the idea is to reduce the long-term pension liability, freeing up more money for capital expenditure, buying new equipment, investing in technology.
So more money for modernization.
That's the argument. Secondly, it aims to lower the average age profile of the armed forces, making them younger and potentially more adaptable to technology. The government also points to similar short-term service models used in other professional militaries, like in the US or Israel, though the contexts are quite different.
Okay, so financial prudence and a younger force. What are the actual mechanics of the scheme for someone joining?
It involves pan-India recruitment, open to young men and women. They serve for 4 years, which includes about 6 months of intensive training. At the end of the 4 years, they are demobilized.
All of them?
No, this is the key point. Only up to 25% of each batch of agnivirs will be selected to continue their service and be enrolled into the regular, permanent cadre of the armed forces. The other 75% leave.
What do the 75% get when they leave?
They receive a lump sum tax-free payment called the Seva Nidhi package. They also get skill certificates detailing the training and experience they gained, intended to help them find civilian jobs.
Right. Now, despite those stated goals of efficiency and modernization, this scheme faced enormous criticism and protests. The sources even use phrases like worrying about an army of tourists. Why such a strong backlash?
The criticisms cut deep, touching on military tradition and potential social consequences. A major concern, reflected in that army of tourists phrase, is about diluting the military ethos. Critics argue that the long-term commitment, the sense of permanent belonging, Nam, Namak, Nishan names, SALT, flag, is what builds unit cohesion and loyalty. Will a 4-year term foster the same spirit, or will it feel more like a temporary job?
It's a fundamental cultural question for the military.
It is. Another major criticism highlighted is the lack of any large-scale pilot testing before rolling it out nationwide. And then there are significant worries about the 75% who are demobilized after 4 years.
What kind of worries?
Concerns about their employment prospects in the civilian world, even with skill certificates. Could it lead to a large pool of trained but potentially disillusioned youth? And there are also concerns about the potential for PTSD or other mental health issues among those who experienced combat or high stress, but won't have the long-term institutional support structures available to permanent soldiers.
So, significant social and cultural questions hang over it. Let's move to the next big structural reform. The move towards Integrated Theater Commands, or ITCs, and the role of the Chief of Defense Staff, the CDS. What's the basic problem ITC is trying to solve?
Jointness, or rather, the historical lack of it. The Indian military has traditionally operated with the Army, Navy, and Air Force having separate commands, separate planning, separate procurement to some extent.
Which isn't ideal in modern warfare.
Not at all. The Kargil conflict exposed coordination gaps. Subsequent reviews, like the Shakatkar Committee report, strongly recommended creating unified theater commands where all assets, Army, Navy, Air Force, within a specific geographic area operate under a single commander. The goal is seamless, integrated operations. The legal framework for this was put in place with the Inter-Service Organization Bill in 2023.
Makes sense on paper. But integrating 3 huge, proud services with distinct cultures and priorities must be incredibly challenging. What are the roadblocks?
They are significant. Firstly, there isn't yet a fully agreed-upon joint operating doctrine that all 3 services buy into. Secondly, there are turf battles, concerns about which service will have primacy in a particular theater command. Will an Army general commanding a maritime theater fully appreciate naval or air priorities, and vice versa?
Resource allocation must be tricky too.
Very. How do you decide budget priorities within a joint command? How do you ensure interoperability of equipment? And even harmonizing training standards across the services for joint operations is a complex task. It's a massive undertaking.
And the creation of the Chief of Defense Staff, the CDS, was supposed to spearhead this jointness effort. But But the role is often misunderstood, right? People might think the CDS commands the whole military.
That's a really crucial distinction the sources make clear for you, the listener. The CDS is not an overall operational commander of the Army, Navy, and Air Force. The 3 service chiefs retain operational command of their respective forces.
So what does the CDS do?
The role is primarily bureaucratic and advisory, though very important. The CDS is the main military advisor to the defense minister. They head the Department of Military Affairs, DMA, within the Ministry of Defense, handling joint planning, procurement coordination, and promoting jointness. Operationally, their command is limited to the newer tri-service agencies like the Defense Cyber Agency and the Defense Space Agency. It's about driving integration, not taking over command.
Got it. One last piece on the internal security architecture.
Yeah.
The Armed Forces Special Powers Act, AFSPA. It's always controversial.
Deeply controversial. Its origins go way back to a British colonial ordinance from 1942. It grants special powers, including legal immunity from prosecution without central government sanction, to armed forces operating in areas declared disturbed.
And the issues around it.
They are persistent and serious. Human rights groups raise major concerns about alleged abuses carried out under the protection of these powers. The legal immunity clause makes accountability very difficult. And it also raises federalism issues, as the decision to declare an area disturbed often rests with the central government or the governor, potentially overriding the state government's views.
What's the way forward, according to the sources? Is it still seen as necessary?
It's presented as a difficult balance. Security forces argue it's necessary in highly volatile insurgency situations. However, the sources mention the Justice Hegde Commission, which reviewed cases in Manipur and strongly recommended reviewing AFSPA. The commission basically said that imposing it continuously for decades becomes a mockery of law and undermines democratic norms.
So push for review, but has its application actually changed?
Yes, there's been a significant reduction in the areas where AFSPA is applied. The sources note its jurisdiction has decreased by around 70% in recent years, particularly in the Northeast. This suggests a gradual, phased withdrawal as security situations improve, though it remains enforced in other sensitive areas. #TED outro.
Wow. Okay, this has been a really deep dive. What stands out most, I think, is just how interconnected everything is. It's not separate problems anymore. The digital world enables radicalization.
Which is often funded by organized crime networks that span the globe.
And that convergence forces nations into this difficult space of gray zone and hybrid conflict.
Which in turn necessitates massive reforms in how defense is structured, how procurement happens, even how diplomacy is conducted. It's all one complex system.
The synthesis, really, is recognizing that convergence. Modern threats exploit every gap. Technical gaps like algorithms, governance gaps between nations, borders that crime flows across.
Exactly. And the national response we've discussed, from overhauling defense procurement with DAP, to creating integrated theater commands, to the nuances of SEO diplomacy, it all reflects just how seriously the systemic threat is being taken.
So we've talked a lot about the whole of government approach needed to deal with all this complexity, hybrid threats, digital sovereignty. But what does this incredibly detailed picture mean for you listening right now?
That brings us to the final thought to leave you with. We've seen how widespread these threats are, from sophisticated organized crime exploiting global governance weaknesses right down to potentially the algorithms on your phone nudging people towards extremism. So the question is, if the solution requires not just a whole of government, but maybe a whole of society effort.
Which implies everyone has a role.
Right. If we're moving towards ideas like zero trust architecture and cybersecurity, where you inherently trust nothing and verify everything, what does that mean for individual responsibility? In this new, hyper-connected, and arguably more dangerous security landscape, what is the role, the duty, perhaps, of the ordinary citizen in safeguarding not just their own security, but contributing to national resilience?
A really important question to ponder, especially as we navigate this increasingly complex digital age. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.
Until next time.